In every crime, there's a reflection. A motive hidden in plain sight. A truth distorted by silence. Welcome to the Forensic Mirror, where psychology meets evidence, and every case reveals more than just what happened, it reveals why. Welcome back, truth seekers. You're now tuned into the Forensic Mirror, where shadows speak and silence is never innocent. Each week, we peel back the layers of guilt, decode the psychological fingerprints, and stare straight into the eyes of calculated chaos. This isn't just true crime. It's truth, dissected. Madness, mapped. And justice, relentlessly pursued. Episode 4, The Hillside Stranglers, The Forensic Examination. Welcome back to the Forensic Mirror. Today I will be exploring another dark underbelly between October 1977 and February 1978. A wave of kidnappings, rapes, and strangulations terrorized Los Angeles. Victims, primarily young women, were found dumped on hillsides, leading the media to coin the killer the Hillside Stranglers. This crisis prompted the formation of a multi-agency task force, and also spurred a social reaction, including a feminist demonstration that sought to connect the murders to a broader pattern of violence against women. Stay tuned while we get started.
The city of Los Angeles in the late 1970s was a landscape of stark contrasts, blending sprawling urbanity with wild, forested hillsides. In the autumn of 1977, this physical geography became tragically intertwined with a new and visceral horror. Between October 1977 and February 1978, a series of savage kidnappings, rapes, and strangulations began a wave of public panic unlike any the city had recently experienced. The victims, primarily young women, were uniformly found deceased and dumped on the wooded inclines surrounding the metropolis, leading news outlets to quickly coin the epithet the Hillside Strangler. The initial focus on the singular strangler reflected the public's perception of a lone, anonymous monster stalking the streets. The terror was pervasive, feeding a climate of fear and superstition heavily sensationalized by the media. The crimes transcended typical law enforcement challenges, creating a societal crisis. In response to the growing body count, authorities established a specialized task force, initially comprising 30 officers drawn from the Los Angeles Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and the Glendale Police Department, dedicated solely to identifying and capturing the predator. The severity of the crisis prompted a visible social reaction. As media coverage focused on the shocking randomness of the violence, an alternative interpretation arose from the feminist community. In December 1977, activists and victims' families staged a media performance titled In Mourning and in Rage. This public ritual sought to connect the specific murders to a broader pattern of violence against women, moving the discussion beyond the personality characteristics of the anonymous murderer to a critique of social consent that enabled such violence. When we look at the first victims, we see that the first known victim was a 26-year-old woman, named Yolanda Washington, whose body was discovered on October 18, 1977, on a hillside near the Ventura Freeway. Detectives noted that her corpse had been cleaned before being disposed of, suggesting a degree of cold calculation in the aftermath of the crime. Faint marks around her neck, wrists, and ankles indicated she had been restrained, likely with rope, before being assaulted, raped, and strangled. The methodology of the killers began to crystallize through investigations and later confessions. According to the statements of one of the perpetrators, Kenneth Bianchi, he and his cousin, Angelo Buono Jr., picked Washington up from a street corner the evening before. Buono, seated in the driver's seat of Bianchi's Cadillac, initiated the abduction by flashing a badge and handcuffing the victim, effectively exploiting the victim's compliance with perceived police authority. This reliance on the pretense of law enforcement was a consistent element of their operational procedure. The terror intensified on November 13, 1977, with the abduction of two girls, 12-year-old Dolores and Dolly Cepeda, and 14-year-old Sonia Marie Johnson. They were last seen disembarking a bus on York Boulevard, approaching a two-tone sedan reportedly containing 2 men. Their fate was confirmed a week later, on November 20th, when a 9-year-old boy treasure hunting near Dodger Stadium discovered their decomposing corpses in a trash heap on a hillside. Both girls had been strangled and raped. The grim pattern continued throughout the end of 1977. On November 23rd, the badly decomposed body of 28-year-old aspiring actress Evelyn Jane King, who had been missing since November 9th, was found near the Golden State Freeway. And in December, 17-year-old Kimberly Diane Martin, a streetwalker, was found unclothed near Los Angeles City Hall. It was revealed that Martin had joined a call girl agency specifically because she feared exposing herself on the streets while the strangler was active. Tragically, the killers placed a call to her agency from a public library payphone, and she was dispatched directly to them. Her body showed signs of torture, reflecting the escalating sadism of the crimes. The investigative evidence suggests that the organization and relative cleanliness of the initial LA murders, such as the effort taken to clean Yolanda Washington's body, likely reflected a degree of discipline enforced by one of the co-conspirators. This structure, which required calculation and planning, allowed the violence to continue undetected for months, shielding the individuals responsible from immediate apprehension. The investigative breakthrough that shifted the epithet from the singular strangler to the plural stranglers revealed the partnership between cousins Kenneth Alessio Bianchi and Angelo Buono Jr. This association was essential to the methodology and duration of the California crimes. Kenneth Bianchi, born in 1951, exhibited behavioral problems from a young age, described by his adoptive mother as having a quick temper and being prone to violent tantrums. Despite an above-average intelligence quotient, he was known as a compulsive liar and academic underachiever. Crucially, Kenneth harbored a powerful, yet consistently frustrated, desire for authority and control, manifested by his repeated attempts to secure a position in law enforcement, including with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, all of which failed. In 1976, Kenneth moved to Los Angeles and began living with his adoptive cousin, Angelo. Angelo, who was older, exerted a catalytic influence on Kenneth, initiating him into a world of perverse sex. The crimes committed in Los Angeles demonstrated a calculated effort to exert power by simulating the authority Kenneth craved, but failed to attain legitimately. Angelo's consistent use of a badge to handcuff victims reinforced this psychological dynamic, allowing Kenneth to fulfill his need for control and manipulation within the context of violence. The consistency of this strategy speaks to a deeply personal pathology for Kenneth, where the act of murder was intertwined with the usurped identity of a law enforcement officer. In a startling account, Kenneth later admitted that he and Angelo, while posing as police officers in 1977, stopped a young woman named Catherine Law with the intent to abduct and kill her. They released her only after discovering she was the daughter of actor Peter Law. This near miss indicates that while their compulsion to violence was strong, it could be momentarily overridden by a perceived threat or fear of powerful retaliation, demonstrating a selective calculation in their selection of victims. But their reign of terror in Los Angeles eventually subsided in early 1978. Kenneth subsequently moved north to Bellingham, Washington, seeking to establish a new life. He secured employment as a security guard. This relocation led to the ultimate unraveling of the case. On January 11, 1979, Kenneth acted alone to carry out 2 murders that would lead directly to his arrest. He lured 2 Western Washington University students, 22-year-old Karen Loretta Mandick and 27-year-old Diane Amy Wilder, into a house he was guarding. He murdered both women by strangulation. The execution of these solo crimes was profoundly different from the calculated partnership in Los Angeles. Without the guidance and presumed discipline of Angelo, Kenneth left numerous clues, demonstrating a criminal ineptitude that contrasted sharply with the relative sophistication of the LA murders. This failure to maintain criminal discipline allowed police to arrest him the following day. During a routine background check, law enforcement linked his California driver's license information to the addresses of 2 strangler victims in Los Angeles, providing the critical forensic evidence necessary to connect the serial violence across state lines. Following his arrest, Kenneth quickly confessed to the 2 murders in Bellingham and began providing information about the serial killings in Los Angeles. The rapid identification and capture of Kenneth in Washington strongly suggests that the success and longevity of the Hillside Stranglers campaign depended heavily on the organizational capacity provided by Angelo. The moment Kenneth operated outside of that structured partnership, his latent unprofessionalism surfaced, leading to immediate capture. So, upon his arrest and subsequent linkage to the Los Angeles crimes, Kenneth Bianchi faced the possibility of the death penalty. His legal strategy shifted quickly, attempting to avoid capital punishment through a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. This maneuver centered on a controversial deployment of forensic psychology involving hypnosis, which became the defining legal spectacle of the Hillside Strangler case. A defense team recommended psychologist Dr. John Watkins to examine Kenneth. The psychologist's initial goal was to hypnotize Kenneth in the Bellingham jail in an effort to restore his memory regarding the events. Over a series of weeks, Dr. Watkins conducted several interviews, often employing hypnosis, hoping to gain insight into Kenneth's mental state and the possibility of repressed memory. The hypnosis sessions allegedly produced an astonishing and different side to Kenneth Bianchi. Under the hypnotic state, Kenneth presented a hostile, sneering persona who claimed responsibility for the murders, identifying himself as Steve Walker. This apparent emergence of an alter ego was presented as evidence that Kenneth suffered from multiple personality disorder, but better known today as dissociative identity disorder or DID, which suggesting that Kenneth was unaware of the actions committed by Steve. What do you guys think about this? Was he just lying to get out of the death penalty? And/or faking this disorder, so he would be sent to a mental hospital instead of prison? Or was he legit? Well, let's continue to see. Dr. Watkins suggested that Kenneth claimed multiple personality was rooted in a deeply painful and abusive childhood. Reports indicated that his adoptive mother was alternately seductive and sadistic, employing extreme punishments, such as holding his hand over a stove or forcing him to pray over his unalived adoptive father's body for a week at age 14. The defense narrative posited that such experiences could have fragmented Kenneth's psyche, leading to the creation of the violent alter ego. The attempt to invoke the MPD defense through hypnosis immediately plunged the case into forensic controversy. A panel of 6 psychiatrists and psychologists examined Kenneth to assess his fitness to stand trial and the validity of his defense. The experts were sharply divided. 2 defense experts concluded Kenneth genuinely suffered from MPD. 2 state-retained experts concluded he was faking the disorder, and 2 experts remained unable to draw a definitive conclusion. The assessment was gravely complicated by evidence indicating Kenneth's meticulous preparation. The analysis revealed that Kenneth, as part of his participation in his defense, had obtained and read numerous sensitive materials, including police reports, interviews with his wife, and medical and psychiatric reports relating to the case. Moreover, the likelihood that Kenneth had observed 2 highly influential films depicting MPD, such as 3 Faces of Eve, which he had seen some years prior, and Sybil, which he'd potentially viewed in his cell shortly before the Watkins sessions were established. These films explicitly demonstrated the classic symptoms Kenneth attempted to replicate, such as the sudden shifts in personality and the presence of amnesic barriers. This body of evidence strongly suggested that the emergence of his claimed other personality, Steve Walker, during hypnosis was not an unearthing of truth, but rather a calculated performance based on known media portrayals and case knowledge, transforming the hypnosis session into a tool of strategic deception rather than clinical diagnosis. Ultimately, the debate over Kenneth's mental state became legally irrelevant when he negotiated a comprehensive plea bargain to save himself from the death sentence. He pleaded guilty to the 2 murders in Washington and 5 of the murders in California, agreeing to serve a life sentence and, crucially, to testify against his cousin, Angelo. This plea rendered Kenneth competent in the eyes of the law. However, the presiding judge for the California proceedings, Ronald George, later delivered a powerful judicial condemnation of the forensic maneuver. In his 1983 judgment, Judge George determined the true nature of Kenneth's actions based on the evidence the psychiatrists who examined him. The case thus served as a landmark example that solidified judicial skepticism regarding the use of hypnosis-induced testimony and MPD defenses in capital cases, particularly when evidence suggests a high possibility of calculated fabrication. I knew it. I knew he was lying about his disorder. What about you guys? Let's continue. The successful negotiation of a plea bargain meant that Kenneth Bianchi was sentenced to life imprisonment in Washington, where he would serve his time. The immediate consequence of his plea was the obligation to become the prosecution's star witness in the case against Angelo Buono Jr., who was arrested in October 1979. Kenneth's agreement was a literal exchange of information for his life. He would confess to his crimes, accept life imprisonment, and testify against his partner in exchange for avoiding the death penalty in California. This pact transformed a confessed serial killer and proven pathological manipulator into the primary source of testimony needed to convict the second Hillside Strangler. The prosecution faced the immense difficulty of relying on a witness whose psychological defense had already been publicly and judicially dismissed as a fraud. This compromised position meant that Kenneth's credibility was relentlessly attacked throughout the subsequent trial. Angelos pleaded not guilty, forcing the prosecution to rely on Kenneth's testimony in the face of the defense's challenges. The case developed into a profound test of the legal system's capacity to deliver justice under extraordinary circumstances. The resulting proceedings became recognized as the longest criminal trial in Los Angeles history at the time, consuming 2 years of court resources and involving approximately 400 witnesses. Despite the complexities and the inherent weakness of the primary witness, the prosecution succeeded. Angelo Buono Jr. was convicted in 1983 for 9 of the Hillside Strangler murders. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The conviction of Angelo, regardless of the staggering length and complexity of the trial, demonstrated the efficacy of the legal system in processing extreme criminal partnerships. Almost 20 years later, and the enduring legacy of Angelo's denial, Angelo Buono Jr. died in prison in September 2002 at the age of 67. And Kenneth Bianchi, serving 2 consecutive life sentences, remains incarcerated at the Washington State Penitentiary. He has repeatedly been denied parole, with his most recently denial in 2025. Kenneth's post-conviction conduct reflects a persistence of the manipulative pathology that characterized his crimes. He has continually filed personal restraint petitions, arguing for his innocence and attempting to rescind his guilty pleas in Washington and California. A core contention of these appeals is that his confession was unreliable because it was the product of hypnosis and other psychological pressure. This continuous denial, which attempts to leverage the very forensic gambit that failed him decades prior, highlights a fundamental and enduring struggle with acknowledging responsibility, consistent with his lifelong pattern as a compulsive liar, driven by the need for external control and narrative manipulation.
And so, as we close episode 4, the Hillside Stranglers case stands as a chilling study in calculated serial sadism, facilitated by a toxic partnership. The chronological evolution of the crimes, from the organized, authority-driven abductions in Los Angeles to the amateurish solo spree in Bellingham, confirms that the partnership between Kenneth and Angelo was structurally necessary for the long-term success of their campaign. Kenneth, the failed applicant of law enforcement, utilized the facade of a police officer to achieve the control he desperately sought, while Angelo provided the operational discipline that initially stymied investigators. The most critical legal element of the case remains that Kenneth Bianchi's attempted use of the dissociative identity disorder defense under hypnosis. This attempt was not merely a psychological defense, but a high-stakes performance informed by media and case files, aimed squarely at avoiding the death sentence. The subsequent judicial ruling by Judge Ronald George, which dismissed the hypnosis and the resulting alter ego, Steve Walker, as faked, delivered a definitive statement on the judiciary's increasing caution regarding the forensic application of highly suggestive psychological techniques in capital crime trials. The case thus secured its place not only in the annals of true crime, but also as a pivotal example shaping the intersection of criminal law, forensic psychology, and evidence admissibility. The ultimate success in convicting Angelo, despite the highly compromised nature of the star witness, demonstrated the resilience of the judicial process, although at an enormous cost of time and resources. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we explore more crime stories across the globe. Thank you for listening.